really studied this and spent a lot of time on it. What made you write the book?
Well, I was a public school student during the Second World War. And one thing we had to do was learn the lyrics to a good number of World War II songs. And I just loved those songs. And I started taking piano lessons when I was 6.5. So I was able to play some of those songs that I had trouble with the chords. My mother was an excellent pianist, and she helped me out. And this interest in World War II songs stayed with me all of my life. About 15 years ago, I started getting serious about this. I started writing articles for World War II magazine. Now, I sent them 8 articles. They accepted 8 articles. To date, they have published 4. They are about 8 years, 9 years behind. Why? I am competing with historians, admirals, generals, history teachers, history professors, so they are tremendously backlogged. So I thought, why wait? I'm going to write another 7 or 8 articles and not submit them to the magazine and do a book. And that's how we ended up with the music of World War II.
You also have a very unique format. Can you talk about that?
Well, some of the most memorable and enduring popular music of the 20th century was written during the Second World War. One quote that I'd like to read, the poet, composer, and entertainer, songwriter Rod McEwen said, 1939 to 1945 was a terrible time for the world, but it was a glorious time for songs. Literally thousands of songs were written during the Second World War. However, only a handful identify specific happenings, events, individuals, occurrences that have been the subjects of popular songs. So the objective of my book is to tell the definitive stories behind these songs which identify specific occurrences, happenings, events, and of course cover their lyrics, their music, and their origins.
Do you have a favorite story?
Do I have a favorite story? Yes. I have a favorite story. I'm going to quote some, so I'm going to tell the story because it has a little local flavor to it. The phrase, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition, is credited to Navy chaplain Howell Maurice Forgy, who uttered these words as the guns of the heavy cruiser USS New Orleans were being loaded during the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. 5-inch shells weighing almost 100 pounds each were being pulled up a powerless hoist by ropes from the bottom of the ship to the top deck where the heavy guns were. But the topside gunners needed a continuous supply of shells, more than could be supplied by hoisting with ropes. So an endless chain of sailors formed an ammunition line which struggled, almost exhausted, to keep these heavy shells moving to the gunners on the upper decks. Now the smoke choked the sailors, irritated their eyes. The loud sounds from the heavy guns and exploding shells troubled them. Now being a chaplain, Howell Forgy could not shoot a gun, he could not handle shells, but he could offer words of encouragement. What he did was walk up and down the ammunition line, this chain of sailors that was formed to pass the sail from one end to the next. Of course, as I had mentioned, the hoist, the powerless hoist, unfortunately the power was not working, and using ropes, they could not get these shells up to the upper deck fast enough. So this chain of sailors was formed. They struggled to pass these 100-pound shells. Smoke choked them, irritated their eyes, the sounds bothered them. Again, being the chaplain, Howell Forgy cannot shoot a gun or handle shells, but he could encourage the sailors. So he ran up and down this line, patting the sailors on the back, encouraging them, and shouting, "Praise the Lord," and pass the ammunition. Now, what readers of my book know, Chaplain Howell Forgy lived at 215 Westmont Avenue in historic Hatfield, which is about 10 minutes from us here. Now, very few people know this. Several years ago, I called the town of Hatfield. I asked them if there was a designated town historian, and they told me, yes, he works in the library. I called the library, and I asked if I could speak to Mr. So-and-so. I forgot his name, and he got on the phone, and I asked him if he knew anything about Chaplain Howell Forgy. He said no. I asked him, do you know anything about the song "Praise the Lord and Pass the Ammunition"? And he said to me, yes, wasn't that a World War I song? And I said, not quite, but you're half right. It was a World War II song. I also knocked on the door of 215 Westmont Avenue a couple of years ago, and that elderly lady answered the door. And I'm thinking to myself, geez, you're in luck. You're going to meet a relative of Chaplain Forgy. But it was not to be. Very nice elderly lady. She invited me inside, offered me a cup of tea. I asked her if she knew anything about Chaplain Forgy. She said no. I asked her if she knew the song "Praise the Lord, Pass the Ammunition," and she sang a couple of lines for me. I asked her. I asked her whether she did anything to the house, whether it was the same as when she purchased it. She told me she had been there approximately 40 years. And she said, no, she did not change anything except paint the inside and paint the outside. It's a rancher. It's a white rancher right on the corner of 215 Westmont Avenue. Marianne, I'm going to write an article for you for SJ Magazine on Howell Forgy and his home at 215 Westmont Avenue. And I'm not going to charge you for it because I am a believer in free speech. So you will get this article without charge. And what I am going to do with this article, if and when you publish it, is I'm going to take it to the town council of Haddonfield, and I'm going to use it as ammunition to try to get them to place a bronze plaque on the sidewalk in front of that house at 215 Westmont.
Very good. That's exactly the type of story that we love, because so many people don't know that he lived there. Okay, that's good. All right. So overall, the music of World War II, are there common themes?
Well, there are so many different types of songs. My book divides them into 6 different classes, but so many of the songs overlap. There are novelty songs, there are religious songs, there are love songs, there are songs of vows, songs that tell a story of souls, of specific differences. Not many songs tell the story of soldiers that were killed, but there was one that is especially good, and that's the ballad of Roger Young. There was a beautiful record of that by John Charles Thomas, and there was another fine recording by Pearl Ives. That's one of my favorite World War II songs. Roger Young was a short fellow, a little over 5 feet. He was in an accident in a basketball game, and he was losing his hearing and his eyesight. And he joined the National Guards and never finished high school. Joined the National Guard in the Second World War. His unit was activated. He was a good shot, a good hunter, although his eyesight was going. And they made him an instructor, a gunnery instructor, promoted him to sergeant. When they sent him overseas, because his hearing was gone, he asked if he could be reduced in rank from sergeant to private, because he was afraid he may miss an order, or he may miss a jungle sound. Apparently his platoon was caught in a depression in the Solomon Islands, and there was a Japanese machine gun up on a hill. They were firing down on the soldiers, on his platoon, and his platoon was caught there. They could not get out. They had lost 4 soldiers, had been shot. Against orders, he crawled up the hill to this Japanese foxhole and threw a grenade in it. One direct hit, the foxhole was knocked out. Now, we're not quite sure whether it was one grenade or more than one. His story was written by the executive officer of his company, whose name is Stanley Frankel, who has written about the Second World War. Frankel claims it was one single grenade, and because his arms were injured by the time he got to the top, he actually pulled out the pin with his teeth and somehow managed to get the grenade into this spot where the Japanese had this machine gun set up. But the Medal of Honor citation mentions plural grenades, so we really don't know whether it was one or more.
But there aren't many stories of heroes?
There are not many stories about heroes that got killed.
Oh,
There are many stories fighting Doug MacArthur, Man of the Hour, General Eisenhower. There are people that were killed. The only one that I really know of is the ballad of Roger Young.
are there negative songs?
Well, the idea during the war was not to have negative songs. Remember, when the war started, we were not winning. 1941 was terrible. 42 was bad. It wasn't until the end of 42 when we started turning things around. So songwriters were told by the government, keep these songs positive, keep the morale up. And the music and entertainment industry did. At the start of the war, the big bands were the start. We had Sammy Kaye, we had Xavier Cugat, we had Jimmy Dorsey, Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller, on and on. But by the time we reached 1944 and 45, the singers were on top. We had Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby, and in England, Vera Lynn and Ann Sheldon. So the singers took over from the big bands, and that was the start of the decline of the big bands. But the end of 49, most of them were gone. 1950, Tommy Dorsey hung in there for a while. I think his band stopped about 51 or 52. Benny Goodman started having problems supporting a large band, which is why he formed the Benny Goodman Sextet. And Marianne Aleardi said, you cannot say the word sextet, you have to call it a tet.
I hate to ask you this question, but what do you think of today's music? Do you listen to it?
Air pollution. Air pollution. The band leaders, musicians, sidemen back in the 30s, 40s, early 50s were great. And I believe the music started going downhill from probably the 60s, 70s. There are a few exceptions. There are always exceptions. But air pollution, that's what I call it.
Okay. Well, Sheldon, thank you. You have great stories. I could sit and talk to you for a really long time. Thank you.